Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to those of you who are listening online. First of all, I want to talk about today. It is significant in history. This is Juneteenth, when slaves found out months and months after the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed that they were free. And I want to commemorate today because I want to let the community know, the people of Maricopa County, that this office is committed to representing people of all cultures. And so that you know that if you are touched by crime, this office will represent you and seek justice for you. As you know, my office has launched an awareness campaign called Cyber Predators and Real Risks. We're continuing to add more data and information about how to protect your kids, and you'll find that on the Maricopa County Attorney's Office website. But today, unfortunately, my job is to tell you just how real this threat is. Recently, my office obtained an indictment for a California man who was accused of extorting a teenage girl in Phoenix for sexual content. Now, before I get into any details, let me remind you that every person is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. But the charges are as follows. Pablo Rodriguez first contacted the Arizona girl on Snapchat when she was but 14 years old. Almost right away, he threatened to harm her family if she did not send him explicit photos. Initially, she ignored it, but then he sent her a message with her home address. And that scared her. It scared her enough that she sent the first photo, and the blackmail escalated from there. He continued with threats of violence and threats that he would share the material unless she sent more. This went on for 11 months until she told her mom, who reported it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the police. Rodriguez, thanks to the excellent work of the Phoenix Police Department and the prosecutors in my office, is now charged with multiple felonies, including sexual extortion, sexual exploitation of a minor, and luring. He is currently being held on a $100,000 cash-only bond, and trial is tentatively set for this October. But this is a stark reminder to all parents that this can happen, and yes, it can happen even to your child. But you can take action to start to protect them starting today. Talk with your kids about the dangers waiting for them online. Do this early and do it often so that you can begin to build the trust now. Know who your child is talking to and what they're talking about. Talk with them about what to do if someone threatens them, offers them gifts, or wants them to video chat or send photos and videos. Check their devices regularly. Look at their phone, tablet, computer, and gaming devices. Go through their messages, photos, and videos. See what apps and games they are using. And I know this is frightening to an older generation of parents, but learn how to use them yourself. If you find something concerning or they come to you, do not get angry. And this is coming from me as somebody who prosecuted crimes against children for 25 years of my career, when a child discloses that something's happening or a parent finds out about it and the parent shows anger or they show sadness or they show judgment, what happens is the kid will stop talking and you won't find out the whole story. In fact, in research, it's called exactly what it is. It's called a disclosure disaster. So please calm yourself as much as you can. If somebody else needs to be the one talking to the child because you can't calm yourself down, then you may need to get another trusted adult. But don't shut your child down by your own emotions. If you're not the right person, help them identify another trusted adult who will listen calmly and support them. And that support includes reporting this to the police. As I've said, I've made resources and guides for these topics available to parents on the Maricopa County Attorney's Office website. You can use it to spot the red flags and the risks associated with particular apps. You'll also know how to report online sexual exploitation. So police have what they need to build a case, and the attorneys in my office have what they need to successfully prosecute a case. Parents, you're the first line of protection for your children. So with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
I'll go first.
All righty.
This is in regards to the pastor, river pastor.
Yes.
First question is, can you give us an update on where things stand with Adam, the suspect, alleged suspect?
Yes. My office has received a submittal on that case relating to the homicide, and we are currently in the process of reviewing that submittal.
Okay. Second to that, is there a timeline as to where things stand as far as an indictment or anything like that at this point?
I can't talk about, whether this would go grand jury or result in an indictment or not. But what I can tell you is we are quickly reviewing it with all due haste. We know the tragedy that this represents.
Yeah. Was this tethered back to MCAO?
Was this what?
Was this, excuse me,
Furthered?
Furthered back to the MCSO?
No. It's been under investigation by the sheriff's office, and then they submitted the case to us.
And as far as Coconino County is concerned, do you want this case to be handled by Maricopa County?
The homicide did occur in Maricopa County, so obviously that would take precedence.
Okay. And then the county recorder. Let me go back and look at this question again. Why would he go around to hire private representation? And is there a resolution going with the Board of Supervisors?
Well, in this situation, because I represent both County Recorder Heap and I represent the County Board of Supervisors, I've removed myself from representing either of them in the discussions regarding the election duties. And so that's why I had appointed independent counsel to both Board of Supervisors as well as Recorder Heap. So that's going to have to be worked out between those two parties and the attorneys that I appointed for them.
All right. Ready for the big list? All right. First of all, follow up on the assault of a police officer in Peoria.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of where is that right now? And along with that, so you issued a grammatical correction to your first statement. Yeah, when the facts came to light of that operation and it was an immigration enforcement, there was no further corrections done. And we're
Now, if we
wondering
were in
why.
court, I would object to his compound question. But let me take those one at a time.
Okay.
As to your first question, we have an individual, Tyler H-I-T-E, who has been charged with 3 felonies related to that incident, 2 Class 4 aggravated assaults, and 1 Class 6 resisting arrest. Obviously, we're very early on in the prosecution. That there's been a complaint that's been filed related to those. As far as the grammatical correction, this was a drug-related raid. There are times, my understanding is that when police will be executing other types of search warrants or whatever on other types of offenses, that if they come across an immigration violation, they may choose to act on that. So that would be a question for the police. But my understanding is that the purpose for the police being out there, including the federal law enforcement, was to execute on a drug situation.
Let's talk about Lori Vallow.
Okay.
Is she, now that the court proceedings are all more or less wrapped up, is she going to do any time here, or is it all going to be back in Idaho?
Well, she still has to be sentenced on July 25th. Once that has happened, she can then go back to Idaho to begin her sentence there, since she was convicted there first.
Okay. Also, there's a Fatality is a US 60 in Stapley Road involving Nicholas Mayer. Death of Zoe Johnson on the side of the road.
Mhm.
And her family has been less than pleased with how things are working out.
Yeah. I mean, that case is obviously a horrendous tragedy, you know, for somebody was killed, somebody was injured. You know, sometimes the law does not fully address the seriousness of what happens because of criminal behavior. So, you know, we're taking into account as much as possible the seriousness of the result with the existing law. But what I will tell you is this, and I do know part of that concern is the fact that this is an individual who allegedly has driven repeatedly on a suspended license. I know that there is an ongoing effort to introduce a bill next legislative session, so 2026, to punish repeat offenders who drive on a suspended license. This is not the first such tragedy. And my office will certainly be supporting that bill so that we can address the seriousness of that type of behavior. But my heart goes out to the family.
Yeah. It's like, what was it,
The
25
families.
25
Families,
years.
yeah.
His own mom was wishing he'd be locked up for forever. And then here I also have Dave Schnierch. I'm just mutilating the last name. He was accused of soliciting a 13-year-old girl, having sex with her for some time, yet the plea is just for 3 counts of attempted sex with a minor. Basically, going back to you've almost made a career on putting these types of guys away. Kind of seems like maybe a slap on the wrist.
I think this case goes to illustrate the point I was making up front. Number one, these are highly emotional cases that really have an impact on the victims. And what I can say is that we have reached out to the victims in this, but without going into details on this particular case, what I can tell you is there's a lot of shame and embarrassment that goes along with this type of thing. Sometimes that makes people reluctant to want to see a criminal justice process through. And so we have to balance that against getting, you know, some form of justice and some sort of protection for the community. The victims have been consulted in this case. And so that is why we arrived at that conclusion. But you're right. It's a horrendous crime.
I know there was a court case just, I think last week regarding one of the Preston Lord suspects. Where does that one stand? I think it was vacated, I believe. If I'm understanding it correctly, where does that stand? And is there any other suspects that might come to light, you know, trials or anything for, you know, regarding that case?
I think probably what you're referring to was the settlement conference that was vacated. There was one held and there was another that was continued on. You know, the cases are working their way through the system with the exception of William Owen Hines. The other 6 individuals have not entered pleas, but are headed for trial, at least at this point. And, you know, it's just going to take a long time to work its way through with that many defendants and the attorneys that have to do just, you know, get discovery, in other words, interview witnesses and read through the massive number of police reports and videos. So we're working hard on that. We're working with the family of Preston Lord. As you know, we just got a bill signed into law by the governor that increases the punishment of this type of behavior where there's not a homicide, but it's people ganging up on one particular person. Doesn't have to be a kid. So we're working diligently to address not only the underlying problem, but also handle the cases and hold people responsible for what they did.
And then kind of going back to what you brought up today, you know, what you highlighted today, how difficult is it to find and track down, you know, these cyber predators and try to, convict them in a court of law.
Well, it's not, it can be complicated. Obviously, you may have individuals who are operating, as in the case that I talked about initially, from another state or even potentially another country. And so the police have their jobs cut out for them. And then, of course, you have to find the victims and get victims who are willing to, not only initially cooperate, but see the process through. And that's hard. And like I said, there's a lot of unwarranted but very real shame that goes along with being victimized in this way. And that gives me an opportunity to say, since we're talking about internet safety, is if this has happened to you, if you're out there and somebody is doing this to you, threatening your family, threatening you with exposure of photographs or information or whatever, you are not alone. It has happened to many people, and you're probably not alone. In fact, very likely not alone in being the only victim of this individual who's doing it to you. So please come forward and please cooperate, because my office is here to work with you and get justice and stop this behavior.
And I know that you said obviously for parents not to get upset with their kids and things like that.
Mhm.
What kind of evidence or things that they need to have to even inquire to call 911 or file a police report? Kind of what things do they need to see or prove to even start that kind of investigation?
Well, typically these kinds of cases come up either because they have found photos on the phone, or they have found texts back and forth or chat back and forth, or the child has told them that something's going on. Typically those provide enough information for them to just stop right there. What we don't want is parents who are investigating or trying to do a full interview of the child. If you have enough information to think there's something criminal going on here, you need to stop and call the police.
Page 2. It was just one other question.
We're going to stop you guys from bringing your phones in here.
This has to do with the Minnesota lawmaker that was murdered.
Yeah.
Guy dressed up as police. Is there anything you suggest we do if we're having any question of
Sure.
if someone's truly a police officer or not?
Sure, absolutely. And I've even heard police agencies talk about this. I mean, if somebody comes to your door and you don't expect police to come to your door, or even if there is a traffic stop, you're welcome to get on the phone and call the police department and say, is this person legitimate? If you're able to get their number, serial number, or their name. If not, they can still be able to tell you by location whether this is legitimate. And so if you have any questions about it, absolutely, the police would welcome that.
And then along this kind of has to deal with just police in general.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're out on just junk you public out on a scene, and they inevitably start asking what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the police aren't exactly truthful with what they're actually doing. Is that kind of, I don't know, frowned upon at all? I mean, lying to the public, does it seem like it creates a mistrust between the powers that be?
Well, I honestly think that's a question more for police. I mean, I could speculate and say that there are certainly times when police need to hold back information for the good of an investigation or the privacy of a victim or security of the victim. So there might be some call for that, but that really would be a police question. Okay. You good? All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good day.
And so yeah, because I'm